Carlton fans, we're back on the winners list, so cue me talking about something positive. Carlton ended the game getting destroyed in disposals after a dominant opening, losers in the inside 50 count, and were smashed in contested possessions. They also had less marks, and despite these losses, weren't comprehensive in their winning ways, from clearance and in tackles. However, success came in a different form against the Dees, where low volume equated to high impact. And I don't just mean disposal-wise. Lachie Cowan, Cooper Lord, Matt Carroll, Ashton Moyer, Harry O'Farrell, Will White, Flynn Young, Corey Durden, Francis Evans. All of these guys are 23 or younger. All bar Corey Durden have played under 50 games. That lack of experience did not point towards a lack of impact. Here's what Voss had to say.
Look, the story out for me is our younger guys being able to really play, almost like a trademark game. All of them were able to sort of put their skills on show, which was fantastic to see. And they've had their own points of disappointment over the last little period of time, but they've been sort of working on their game in the background. And as you said, O'Farrell, Carroll was absolutely outstanding. Cowan, same. Flynn Young, Ashton Moyer. That for me today was the absolute story.
And Voss also had this to say about how the game occurred.
We had some really great defensive actions, some really sound contest moments, but then also some really good composure with the ball in hand, which always gives you confidence, the guys in a headspace to be able to take care of anything or any challenge that comes their way when they're engaged like that.
In taking care of a challenge like Carlton did, Voss alludes to the young, inexperienced players that demonstrated these attributes of composure, contest and defense, even if it came at the expense of a few mistakes. Voss said that while these guys have been developing in what some would call a hostile environment, the youth have taken the lost season as an opportunity to learn and grow, and the development showed in this game. Today, in brief fashion, we'll dissect some key moments that some of these players exhibited and the implications of these moments. Moments where impact didn't necessarily reflect the numbers. We've got a very simple example here where Melbourne win the clearance, and given the display of representation, while the second wave will have the Blues outnumbered, Matt Carroll will be first to the ball, and Carlton need to utilise this advantage. Fritsch isn't clean with pressure coming from both ways, and Carroll getting in the way removes Fritsch from the contest, and that allows that advantage to be felt, with practically every Carlton player in this visual to be involved. The spread Carlton create, and Cowan's ability to remain composed and shake off the man, means Carlton can further spread without delay and capitalise on this space Doherty has created on his matchup. This allows Carlton to take it into their attacking half, where they'll have an attempt on goal courtesy of another youngster, as opposed to the stresses of playing defence. Here's another great example, this time by Frankie Evans. On this forward 50 entry, he'll start by arranging himself where De Koning sits when the kick enters forward 50, but is spoilt out to what Carlton would consider as a danger zone. Frankie Evans tracks the play well. All these Blues are in pursuit, but you can identify where the space is that Carlton are yet to converge on. Tholstrup probably kills the play because it takes fractionally longer to get it to the outside than if Viney was able to take it himself. And this plays straight into where Frankie Evans is lining the man up. Melbourne trapped themselves, having taken an extra step, delaying the move, with Frankie Evans doing well to capitalise on this Melbourne blunder. Very similar to what we saw last week with the McGovern-Doherty example. Carlton didn't score from this sequence, but every point came from turnovers in the first. This absolutely played into Carlton's forward half intercept and Melbourne's high clanger game in this time. Another great example. Courtesy of a Matt Carroll intercept and 50-metre penalty, Carlton got it inside their forward 50. But it's what Carroll does on the turnover which complements his hard work, turning defense into offense. With the camera off this angle for a little bit, I'm going to assume Carroll's been running laterally for a bit of time now. So he does well to get across, anticipate where the ball is headed, and help Sard out. Given his height over Sard, you'd think he's going to go up. But Carroll backs in Sard to perform over the taller opponent, which he does, meaning this gamble to remain down pays dividends. Carlton will have numbers at ground level, but the Dees win it. Cowan does well to pressure the ball carrier, forcing a lofted hand pass. Cripps, who was getting to the contest, applies pressure on the receiver, and Matt Carroll, sitting off the back of stoppage from the start, can take it through the contest with drive, countering the momentum of Windsor, who's going the other way, to burst through. The kick is to advantage of a leading Moir, even if it seems like it's going down Rivers' throat, because it is. Rivers waiting for it to land with him is a bit of a cardinal sin, but the kick was that much of a laser, it was almost deceiving. That's strong and smart play from Carroll though, supported by his teammates at ground level to hand Carlton back possession, which they convert from handily via an area of great strength on the night. How about this defensive effort by Will White? And there were defensive efforts like these all night, obviously, and it's been a rule within the Voss playing style to track back and basically kill your attacking structure when you force the turnover. But I guess this is why you throw all your chips into defense. White starts well up here, and you'll see where he is when it gets to the top of the square. Kozzie Pickett gets a fractional amount of space after O'Farrell rolls behind, and his opponent at this time commits to the contest, and that requires Sard's services to contain him. If it wasn't for this Will White lunge to affect the kick, Kozzie Pickett is ending the night with 6 goals over 5, an important goal on the night which Melbourne never had. This is a nice crafty play by Flynn Young, where Cooper Lord does well to absorb the contact, all the while Young's opponent is trying to apply the tackle. Young sits on the outside. The handball isn't precise, but Young's collection is clean, and it enables Young to take it towards a little pocket of space. He sweeps across these guys and away from these guys, with the little sidestep helping as well. It was a pity he was taking the shot off the opposite foot, because everything else just lovely. This is a massive sequence in the game. It's come after 4 straight goals for the Dees in the first half of the third quarter, and Carlton need a fire starter desperately. The ball spews out to Cooper Lord's side, and while Carlton win the possession initially, Cooper Lord's trying to leak out the front, and Pittonet's handball doesn't play into that. However, Lord's tackle is instrumental, as this not occurring would help another Melbourne clearance, given they have the structure to do so. And so, this now changes the dynamic. Matt Carroll's composure on this play is brilliant, which means White can be reached with ease, as opposed to a potential clanger. And White's composure is much the same, using the full allotment of his allowed running distance to find Frankie Evans. When White marks initially, nothing is on offer. In the time White runs, Moir comes forward, Turner sits back given Evans looks to be going there, Fogarty's vacated, and Curno's running pocket side. While these Melbourne defenders have alleviated most threats, there's no one filling this gap that with time has vacated. And Carlton actually utilised that advantage as opposed to bombing it. How good is that? And Carlton respond, speaking to that quote by Voss before, with youth involved at every step in the process. Or how about something as simple as this? Flynn Young's come back to help the Blues defensively, DeConing as the spare, and having remained down, roves this aerial contest. Young waits as his man gets drawn in, and Kozzie Pickett is breathing down his neck, trying to cover. With the handball not hitting Young initially, how smart is it to tap it on to not kill the momentum from the drive forward? And in supporting, Pickett is clearly indecisive, as Fogarty gestures he may use Young as support, but it ultimately keeps Pickett away. With Fogarty having gained distance on his opponent prior, it allows him to execute a pass uncontested, perfectly to advantage. This really should have been a conversion without a devastating collision, given Moir's handball is not so polished. But Young's presence here was more impactful than you realise, and Carlton eventually convert from the free kick that arises, with yet another set shot, and not for the first time off a Young contribution. Matt Carroll had the assertiveness to press forward all night for Carlton attacks without being used, so it remains no surprise how he kicked his first career major. After Doherty's goal to kickstart the last, Carlton win a free in the middle. Bailey Fritsch started the final quarter beside Matt Carroll. You'll notice as Cripps takes a mark in attacking midfield, Fritsch is defending this space. Meanwhile, Matt Carroll is here. You'd be forgiven as a Melbourne player for thinking, this is going long. But this is why Cripps faking the kick and feeding Carroll is such a heads-up play. And look at the space. Fritsch is far more reactive than the next closest, which is Petrarca and Langdon. But unfortunately, Carroll is a left footer. And Fritsch closing has no bearing on Carlton's second of the quarter, a proper team lifter. And how about the defensive running on the next sequence? Melbourne have barely had it inside 50 all quarter. Cooper Lord starts here as Melbourne rebound off their back 50. Melbourne probably should have had a better outcome than this, given Lindsay had a fair bit of space to get the shot off, and yet he didn't convert. Lord does a fantastic job here though, because O'Farrell is playing front spot, Carroll is covering that assignment behind, and Fritsch is now Lord's assignment. It gets over Carroll's head, as Van Rooyen calls it, for about here. And while it's very possible they spoiled each other, Lord makes sure of it with a spoil over the line against two of Melbourne's taller marking targets inside 50. Great commitment. And let's top it off with this example. Melbourne transitioning forward again. Van Rooyen is picked up by O'Farrell. O'Farrell's positioning and Melksham's engagement with Weitering off the ball means it's an uncontested grab for the Dees. O'Farrell bolts, and to be fair, it's not an awful kick by Van Rooyen to Cozzy in the pocket. But O'Farrell is an added obstacle that no doubt affects the kick, given it's got to get over a tall target. On top, O'Farrell getting back means that when Pickett completely does sard in with a handball that bypasses the blue, and it screams danger given the space, O'Farrell being present to just take it and lock it up is a vital moment. We said before that Pickett could have had 6, he also could have had 7 if not for this stop. An important intervention to make up for the earlier blue, and that's maturity. With some vital contributions by Cooper Lord and Corey Durden and the umpires, creating a transition as they hung on by the most slender of leads, Carlton found the breathing space they needed as it led to the experience of Charlie Curnow taking hold, kicking the sealer. Overall, Carlton experienced one of their more mature wins of the season. And ironically, it was one of the more youthful sides they've fielded in recent memory. D questions called for blue responses, and evidently with today's analysis, there was no shortage of these replies, largely led by the younger Blues who came of age in this match. What do you think? Was it the experience or the youth that drove this win? Who did you enjoy watching the most out of the youngsters? Thanks for tuning in. We'll be back next week for another Carlton analysis. But until then, stay safe, chat soon, and bye for now.